Back in the day, as you mentioned, they didn't have
Right.
cybersecurity degrees, right?
Right.
So you kind of like work your way into this industry,
Yeah.
which is what I love about it so much.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's a really important point for people to remember. A lot of us didn't get our start in cybersecurity. We got our start in technology or some other biology. For me, it was different, but someone took a chance on us. And with the pervasiveness of the need for cybersecurity professionals, identity professionals, I think that we need to remember to look at potential, look at transferable skill sets, and really take a chance on people because someone took a chance on us. So let's pay it back for sure.
This is Identity at the Center. If it has anything to do with IAM, this is the go-to podcast. Now your hosts, Jim McDonald and Jeff Stedman.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jim McDonald. I'm not here with Jeff Stedman today. He was unable to make our session today, but we've got a fantastic episode coming up. Before I get into things, I wanted to do some housekeeping items and kind of go over our discount codes for upcoming conferences. So the first one is very much in the very near future is Identity Week America. That's going to be in Washington, D.C., September 11th and 12th. We have a discount code for 30% off. It's IDAC 30. We'll have a link in the show notes if you want to follow that, or you can just Google Identity Week America and go through the registration process. As you know, we've attended and covered the FIDO Alliance Authenticate conference for the past few years. We have a discount code for that as well. It's the best one that you're going to find anywhere. It gets you 15% off your registration. It's IDAC 15. Again, we'll have a link in the show notes, but it's definitely a conference that we recommend. We had Andrew Shikyar. We've recorded an episode with him that'll drop here in the next couple of weeks. Today, we have a fantastic guest. It's somebody that I met at the Identiverse conference this year, Deneen DeFiore. She's the Chief Information Security Officer from United Airlines. Welcome to the show, Deneen.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you. Deneen, it's kind of our tradition here to get your identity origin story. How did you get into the industry? So the question is, how did you get into identity? Did it choose you or did you choose it?
Well, I think it chose me, actually. I had various roles in technology and actually kind of, I'll say, fell into the identity scope and space. I was working at General Electric back in the day, and we were really starting to build capabilities around cybersecurity, at that time, information security, IT governance, risk management, and being the company that GE was, very separate, had different business units. But one of the core principles we established very on was having a centralized identity system, which was interesting at that time at such a large, diverse company, but was able to get into it that way. And I guess, ironically, coincidentally, moved around, a couple times in my career at GE in different roles in different businesses, and ended up running identity for the company several times. So it keeps choosing me, actually. I don't know that I'll ever get away from it.
That's a really cool story. And as we were getting ready for the show, you mentioned that your background, you got a degree in biology, which is a similar story to me. I have my degree in political science. Back in the day, as you mentioned, they didn't have cybersecurity degrees, right?
Right.
So you kind of like work your way into this industry, which is what I love about it so much.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's a really important point for people to remember. A lot of us didn't get our start in cybersecurity. We got our start in technology or some other biology. For me, it was different, but someone took a chance on us. And with the pervasiveness of the need for cybersecurity professionals, identity professionals, I think that we need to remember to, look at potential, look at transferable skill sets, and really take a chance on people, because someone took a chance on us. So let's pay it back for sure.
Pay it back. Yeah, I love that. Now, you mentioned your time at GE, General Electric. It sounds like that's really where you kind of like cut your teeth in identity. And I'm wondering, do you have any interesting project stories or things that you kind of were involved with or led in terms of identity and access management?
Yeah, we did a lot of interesting things there. And, you look back at the time, you don't think it was that innovative or that cutting edge or that impactful, but kind of looking back on our approach and philosophy and where we push the boundaries was some pretty cool and significant things. I mean, one of the things that came to mind was, again, pooling all those disparate businesses together into one central identity system was it was tough, and we did it. We collapsed, back in the day, I can't even remember how many domains until, really one domain. We had, we really went after what I'll say true single sign-on. Single sign-on at that time, back 15 years ago, was not really single sign-on. You logged it, and still to this day, a lot of organizations don't get it right. So what we developed with the tools and technologies at that time, we developed a great user experience so that you could get access to the applications you needed when you needed them, and only be challenged, for a different form of authentication when it was appropriate. So we were starting single sign-on, risk-based authentication, zero trust authentication, or zero trust type identity systems before I think those terms were cool, right? But looking back on it, it's interesting to reflect on that and see, that is kind of like the table stakes now and the standard ways of approaching things. So a lot of great projects, programs, and people that were there to help with that.
That reminds me so much of my history in identity, or how I got into identity. So I was an AD administrator. So I was one of those domains. I was at a company called Ingersoll Rand, which was a global diversified industrial company. Right. Whatever that means is like we bought a bunch of brands, pushed them all together and said they're one company. Yep. And, GE always had the reputation of having fantastic management training. So the CIO of the sector that I worked for, he came from GE. Sure. And we were kind of driving toward that same, why do we have 15 Active Directory domains around the company? And, there's a lot of fiefdoms, if you will. And it's not as much today, but I don't think. But back in the day, that was very much a real thing. Right. I agree. And I also think identity back in the day was looked at as a, I'll say like an IT thing. Like, it's basically an IT thing, right? It was kind of, you just needed it to get the access to systems. It wasn't really looking at a strategy that not just enables, just access to systems, but, a better user experience, right? And then enables privacy and trust and different things like that. So I think we've come a long way, which is really cool to see. Yeah, the conversations we were having 20 years ago was, I want to take my laptop and go to this other office and plug it in, and I just want to be able to use the printer, right? And I was like, you can't just use the printer? What are you thinking? So let's shift the conversation. We've been talking a lot about back in the day. Yeah. But today, you're the CISO of United Airlines, and you gave a presentation at Identiverse. I thought it was fantastic. It was obviously longer than some of our podcasts. So can you give us kind of the cliff notes of that presentation? Yeah. So, we've been looking at specifically customer identity as an enabler of a few things I just mentioned, right? Trust with our customers, enabling that higher level of digital interactions. Like, how do we get more value between ourselves as United Airlines and our customers by increasing the trust? So looking at customer identity as an enabler for that. We've done things which might not be like super
super creative or super innovative. But when you think about the I can't millions and millions and millions of accounts that we manage globally, and the use case for airlines, like the passenger use case, right? Moving those identities into a modern authentication and authorization platform with the ability to have a customer be secure, enable privacy, things like MFA, things like adaptive authentication in the future, choice around authenticators is really something that we're striving for. So we're trying to make sure that we're taking all the goodness of the identity technologies from a security, privacy, and trust perspective, but then also using that to enable better experiences for our customer. The more we know about our customer, the more that we understand how they like to interact digitally with our channels, the better experience and personalized journey we can offer them. So it's been an interesting and really cool journey for us to start to implement that, changing from the legacy, kind of authentication, get access to our website, you're a Mileage Plus member, to now having this holistic customer identity journey that provides not only the security and privacy and trust, but also that, really, really personalized and meaningful customer experience.
Yeah, that customer experience, CIAM to me, like that is where it's at in terms of exciting stuff. And I think part of that for me is, the whole idea that whatever your backend is like, if it's different applications that kind of build the whole, the .com is really like, a set of infrastructure, different applications. Yeah. That should not be your customer's concern, right?
Right.
They just want one experience. So there's the ability to drive a better user experience. And you talked about trust and their data not ending up maybe in third-party systems, that their authentication is strong.
Right.
That's one of the challenges, I think, with going to passwordless is even though we all hate the password, it's behind so many breaches. Some people think if I don't enter a password, maybe it's not as secure. So I think that's one of the things our industry will have to take on. I think the other thing with CIM is getting to that one identity that really covers everything. That becomes a back-end enabler. So now the business can farm data based on the identity. So it's just, you're solving so many different problems by getting it right, but it's not always the easiest problem to solve either.
It is not the easiest problem to solve because, the customer ecosystem, right? All those different applications and different channels, they're all disparate. They're all have been there, in different shapes and forms on different levels of maturity and capability, and trying to harmonize that and make sure that you're not adding additional friction into that customer flow. Is a interesting challenge, and it's hard to overcome sometimes, but we're working at it, and I think we're getting it right. So hopefully if you're a customer of ours and use our mobile app or our website, you'll see some great changes in the profile, account management, and login experience, as well as your travel journey based on identity.
Right. Yeah. If you're seeing the progress, then you can thank Deneen and her team. Speaking of kind of you and your team, like you're not getting it all done. You've got a team of smart people. So you're a leader of people within the organization. And I wanted to know, what is your philosophy for building a winning team?
Sure. Yeah, I've had several experiences across my career, building really high performing, capable teams that, I'm really proud of. There's been folks that have, I've hired, and they're CISOs of companies now, which is really exciting for me to see their growth and their success. So I think, when I look at building teams, it's really, it is a science, but it's also more of an art than a science. When you look at what you're a highly functional team, the first thing you need to do is really understand, the outcomes that you're trying to drive. What are you trying to accomplish? And then do you have the skills and capabilities of the people that can, drive to get those outcomes achieved? And sometimes, having sometimes based on the people, you would organize differently, right? Or you would bring in different complements of people, or you would have things arranged differently if it was different outcomes you were trying to achieve. So I really think as a leader, you have to understand your people, from a skill set, a capability, how they work together, what motivates them, right? And put those pieces together. It's like a puzzle, and make sure that they all work and they continue to function and continue to work, and nothing's breaking down. So it is, it is a science. There's skill sets and ways to approach that, but it also is an art. Like you have to think about it, right? And in one situation might be the way you've organized, the way you've rallied around people might be great. In another situation, it might not work. So you're always kind of assessing and looking at where you are.
Yeah, it's because people are complex, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you might have somebody who is really good in their domain, maybe the best in the world.
Yes.
But nobody can work with them.
That's right.
And
that's right.
I think speaking from my personal experience here is, trying to coach that person, make them to be more likable, easier to work with. And hopefully you can do that. In some cases, though, it's not possible.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a tough part of being a leader, right? I mean, you want your main job is you want people, you're there for them to be successful, right? You want people to succeed. You want them to be their best and contribute the most value, right? And that's your job as a leader. But, the other part of being a leader is having those tough conversations, right? And providing that feedback and, receiving feedback and continuously improving. So it's, it is a responsibility of a leader to make sure you're doing that.
You hit the nail on the head. Yeah. The feedback piece, I think for most people I've talked to, is the hardest part.
Yes.
Telling somebody that they're not doing a good job is never easy.
Yeah. Yeah. But always balance it out. Like I always, when you talk about feedback, it's like, in that moment, and you're like, hey, this situation could have gone better if we thought about these things, or if you did these things right. But also, as a leader, don't forget to say, hey, that went awesome. And it was awesome because you did these 3 things right. Keep doing those 3 things, because that's going to help you. Those are going to be skills that you're going to lean on, and that's going to be your core to help you in no matter what situation you are. So I think always remember that too.
Yeah. So some specifics here. So we're big proponents of the conferences that are happening in the identity space. We always talk about the discount codes, but even with the discount codes, and if you get good pricing on a conference, it's still very expensive to send people to conferences. What is your attitude on conferences for your team?
Yeah, so I do. I encourage professional development, and that comes in a couple of different forms, right? It definitely in this industry particularly is around conference attendance. There's all the sessions around the best practice sharing and, meeting and networking and understanding what other people are doing in this space, because it's constantly changing, and it is an ever evolving space, right? So I think attending conferences, keeping ahead and abreast of what is going on in the domain, as well as sharing and networking, is really, really important. I also really encourage, setting aside time for professional development. It may be a training course. It may be, online stuff. It may be attending something in person, or it may be, 2 weeks of, or, a week of doing, research or something like that. But making sure you're dedicated to continuously learning is really important. Yeah,
totally agree with that. And I want to kind of come back to what you're doing to get your learn on in a little bit.
Sure.
Before we shift topics, though, along with conferences, I was going to ask your attitude on certifications.
Sure. So I use certifications in my organization with my team as a professional development opportunity and incentive to continue to grow and learn. Do I think they're absolutely necessary? No. I think they offer a validation that you have you understood the content and can demonstrate whatever domain knowledge that certification is for. And I think as your my opinion is, as you're starting out, maybe those certifications are a little bit more important, right? If you maybe, like we talked about, how do you get your start in identity or cybersecurity? If you're coming from a background that maybe wasn't in that domain, but then you go and you're learning, right? You're taking the self motivation to learn a new skill, and you're getting that certification. Even if you don't have that practical experience, I think that demonstrates a lot of character, of knowledge, skills, and abilities. So I think that's important. I mean, as you get up the ranks, maybe not. I mean, maybe not so much. Like, I don't know that people really care if I have a CISSP or if I have something else, right, at this point in my career, So I think it just depends. But I don't discourage them. I think they're valuable, and people are motivated by them, and they learn knowledge by obtaining them. So I think they have their place.
Right. I think they're helpful for people on like the job hunt.
Yeah.
It kind of proves that you do have
Right.
some base of knowledge. And what I do like about certifications is it kind of sets a target for obtaining information. But I do think that the downside of them is that sometimes you kind of drill into having to know some minutia that doesn't really contribute to the job that you're going to be doing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So one of the other areas I wanted to ask you about is like with the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, it's kind of a position that's maybe 50-50 business and technical. And so that's what I wanted to ask you about is like, how do you strike the balance between being a business leader and being a techie?
Yeah, there definitely is a balance. And I think both domain skills are needed if you're in a role like mine. And really any technology role, if you can understand really what the outcomes you're trying to achieve are from a business perspective, like what if you are able to break down barriers or de-risk something, right? Then the business can do more. They can operate in a different market. They can launch a new product. They can add feature and capability that they couldn't maybe before because there were compliance issues or security issues or risks there. So really understanding the business and how it operates makes you a better technology leader, a better cybersecurity leader, a better identity leader or practitioner. So I really think you have to have that, I'll say, attitude and perspective when you're going into your role. Now, I lead technical teams. I value that skill set, and I hold myself accountable to this day to make sure that I can at least, talk the talk and demonstrate the understanding and knowledge of how things work. I'm not, like I said, I'm not like rolling up my sleeves, scripting and pounding on the keyboard and doing any of that work anymore. But I want to be able to ask the intelligent questions. I want to be able to challenge my team to think about things differently. And I need to understand the technology to do that. So I make sure that I do. And then I connect the dots with the business outcomes. And then I'm also able to translate, okay, I may have spent an hour or 2 hours with my customer identity team talking about, the data flows and all the different things that we need, but I can't go into our loyalty program operations leader and have that conversation. I have to have, okay, you're going to get this data and here's the impact on the customer experience. And now you'll be able to do these things because we're putting this technology in place to increase trust, right? And I have to be able to have those conversations on both ends, because that way then we get aligned and we achieve better outcomes, together.
You might have to have those different conversations all within the same day, right?
Yes.
You got to have enough technology under your belt that your team respects you and understands that you get what they do.
Right.
And they don't look like they feel like they have to dumb it down for you.
Right.
But at the same time, you've got to be able to go into that boardroom and explain why you need money to spend on XYZ project.
Right.
And you used a word earlier that I feel like is like the number one word for business leaders these days, which is outcomes.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
That seems to be the focus that people really want to understand. if we do these things, what's the outcome we
Right.
can expect?
Right. Absolutely. And you have to be able to tie the work that you do to, again, those secure business outcomes. You have to understand, like, okay, if it is customer identity, then the outcomes for member conversions or whatever it is, right? That's how you're doing that. I mean, you could have the fraud metrics and the account takeover metrics and all those operational metrics, but in the end, what are you contributing to the overall business goal? And I think that's really important for people to understand, like, why you're doing what you're doing. You're not existing there to do identity or cybersecurity for identity or cybersecurity's sake. I'm there to help make sure that people trust United Airlines when they get on the plane, right? That's what I'm there for.
I think a lot of our listeners who are the identity practitioners of the world would love to be able to have an opportunity to develop their way into a CISO or CISO-like role. And so I'm wondering kind of what are some of the tips that you would have for them in terms of how to get the right experience, how to get the right education to be able to get into a position like that? And then I want to ask you, like, what do you have to do to keep your saw sharp?
Sure.
I always say sharpening the saw is what it's all about.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah. So I think, I think identity professionals are uniquely positioned to get into, I'll say a CISO or a cybersecurity leadership position. If you think about what we do, it revolves around really the business processes, the HR workflow. Like on the enterprise side, the HR workflows, on the customer side, that customer experience. So you're positioned uniquely to really have the ability to be immersed in understanding the business, right? And if you can develop that skill set and demonstrate your knowledge there, and again to the deliverables you have, I think that's really one of the key things. It might be harder, right, for someone that's working in the SOC, right, as an incident response leader, because they're there when something goes bad. They're not there when, hey, we're doing these great things for you and we're adding feature functionality. So I do think, I do think identity professionals are uniquely positioned to kind of, get closer to the business than some other cybersecurity domains. But, I think some of the things that I've done to get into the position at IM is, again, really look for, I'll say the hard, I'll say ugly, ambiguous problems, and then go after it, right? Because that's how you differentiate yourself. You have to be comfortable. Like, my job every day is like 5 of those situations, in a row at random times, working through it, right? So you have to be comfortable for that. And I think the earlier on in your career that you can practice and kind of lean into those situations and demonstrate your capability and value to deliver a solution is really, really important. So, I think if you can do that, you're well on your way. The last thing I'll mention on a leadership path would be influencing without direct, I'll say, line leadership, especially in our roles as cybersecurity professionals. Like 90% of what I do and my team does, I can't do it. We can't do it. We have to have the digital technology teams do it. We have to have the lawyers do it. We have to have the compliance people do it. We have, like everybody else is executing our policy and operationalizing it. So I do think the relationship management and it being able to develop skill sets to influence people without authority is super important.
I kind of feel like I'm with you there on that
Yeah.
IAM piece. Being a great opportunity to position yourself. I also, having been at a company like Ingersoll Rand, sounds a lot like GE. You have people that have been in their roles for 30, 40 years. And sometimes it feels like, I could work here for the next 10 years and not get a promotion. But I think there come times where, big, hard to do projects are going to come along. And that's where you should try to insert yourself, even if it's a little outside of your comfort zone. It's
Totally.
going to take some getting outside of your comfort zone to build a career.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's a little cliche to say, but if you're not like if you don't feel like a little uncomfortable, you're probably not learning to your max, potential. So I definitely agree with you on that point.
Yeah. So what are you doing right now to stay sharp, technology and business wise?
Yeah. So I definitely am a firm believer and always have been of continuous learning. And that's really from a self-starter perspective, right? So I spend hours each night kind of looking at different, doing research, looking at different, whatever, blogs or sites or on, social media, following people that are kind of opining on issues and understanding what is going on. Read a lot of intelligence and threat reports and making sure that I'm up to speed on that, as well as the new technologies that are coming up. So I'm definitely, looking at what do I need to learn on a day-to-day basis. I have, I'll spend time with my team. Okay. How does this work? How this new, if it's this new capability for threat detection on serverless, what does that mean? Right? Like, what does that mean and how does it actually work? And I also have a great network that I can reach out to on a just-in-time basis, right? For different subject matter experts. If I need to know something, I will reach out and ask them to help me feel comfortable or understand. And that's on the business side too. So the technology side I described, but I also have people like, okay, well, I'm not an expert in, I'll say flight operations, right? But I need to understand that so I don't impact, the flight operations when we're doing MFA on an electronic flight bag in the middle of a flight. So I go and I learn, I sit with people and I observe and I make sure that I'm continuously understanding, how people work and what they need to do. So it's always about continuously learning.
Yeah, that would be really bad if someone missed their flight because of an MFA prompt or something like that, or didn't get their bag loaded. So I think that someone in your position becomes expert in business, expert in technology at the appropriate levels. But then the third area is risk.
Yes.
I mean, that's really what we've all become, right? As risk professionals.
You bet. That's one of the key things that I say, like any role that you're going to have in cybersecurity, any of the domains, you have to be an excellent risk manager, right? That's all about what we do. We identify the risks. We look at the treatment that we have to apply to manage that risk or understand what it means to accept that risk. So that is key. And yeah, totally agree with that. So anything you could do to keep, flexing that muscle, like it becomes involuntary, right? Like that's just something in the background that you're always doing is assessing risk and, identifying treatments and, making sure people understand what their tolerance is, can they accept it or not, and how that influences the path to go forward. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And that, if you're in this space and you want to kind of build your career, I think that's one of the best ways to do is really to understand risk and be able to talk about risk and to add risk management frameworks to your way of approaching problems.
You bet. You're spot on. Totally agree.
So I wanted to shift the conversation. We talked a lot about, your role as CISO. I think one of the other areas is managing a set of technology. And what I've seen is kind of a lot of larger organizations wind up still having to build information security or cybersecurity systems to meet their particular use cases. And it's one of the scenarios, I don't see it in small to mid-sized businesses anymore where they're doing build versus buy.
Yeah.
But I wonder, are you still doing build versus buy analysis, or do you kind of like start with, hey, we want to be on products for everything?
Yeah, so we look at it in a kind of a specific lens and context, right? We again always like trying to figure out what risks are we trying to manage, what outcomes are we trying to achieve, and there's typically a platform or a solution, right, that can help us meet 80% of that. But we also have to take into context the threat actors, the impact of the risks associated with those threats. And then we have to kind of match up, are we okay with not having those features or capabilities or on the platform, or what do we do then? So what we typically do is we leverage a lot of platforms and commercial technologies to get like the 80% done, right? And then that gap between commercial technologies and I'll say our threat profile, our risk profile, we typically tend to build solutions that close that gap, as best we can. And then, at some point in time, what typically happens, right, is that gap short, like that what we built becomes now for lack of a better word, a commodity. It's in the platform, it's in the vendor solution. And then we deprecate what we built. We use the commercial technology, and then we go on and move to a different value add. So we're continuously kind of learning that way. So that's been a philosophy for a long time, for myself and a lot of the team members that have worked for me. And it seems to work out really well, that custom content development, custom solution development to bridge the gap where we don't have those standards tools. And, again, everybody's resource. I don't care if you work for, a Fortune 100 company or, a small to mid-sized business. Everybody is resource constrained. Everybody doesn't have an unlimited budget, right? We don't have the people to do what we need to do. So we have to be very, I'll say, selective and prudent around how we spend money, what we can actually build and maintain, going forward, because there's always a cost to that as well, too.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. So, one thing I was really excited about was that you were part of the keynote at Identiverse. Somebody who's kind of like another IAM practitioner who is now overseeing information security for a well-known brand, a very big company, and you're kind of one of us, right?
Yeah.
That's the exciting part. And so I wanted to get you onto the podcast, and it may have been the first time you've heard of our podcast, Identity at the Center, but when you heard that name, what did you think?
No, I thought it was great. I love it. It really, really resonates with me. And I've said this, and I know people that worked for me back in the day when I started Identity can vouch for this, but I always believe identity is at the center. It is the center and really keystone of any cybersecurity strategy. So, like your name of your podcast just hit home. I think it enables a lot and informs any function and any capability within your cybersecurity strategy. So it really is the center and keystone. So love it.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff and I just recorded episode 300.
Wow.
During that episode, yeah, thank you. We talked about this, and I said, how the buzz term is identity is the new perimeter, almost such that you can say identity is the perimeter.
Right.
But I actually think identity is the center, and we don't really trust the perimeter anymore.
Right. Yeah.
The perimeter, if you think of it as the firewall, keeping the threat actors out, it does that, and that's important. But eventually, there's people that are out inside of the perimeter, and we have to have safeguards, and we can't trust that people inside the perimeter are all, the good guys, if you will.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. That's awesome.
Yeah. So love having you on as an identity practitioner, and I wanted to kind of tap into your futurist point of view and understand what are some of the ideas or some of the things that are exciting to you in terms of up and coming or areas that are getting a lot of focus now in identity.
Yeah. So I think, a lot of the focus in identity is really around, I'll say, like biometrics. We're able to, you talk about passwordless, but biometrics in addition with with AI and ML have made it better, right? And more trusted. And we are able to do different things. We're able to look at identity holistically from a technology perspective because we have biometrics integrated with digital identities, integrated with, I'll say attributes and context, which I think is super exciting. There's a lot of, I think, really, really cool stuff going to be happening in that area in the next few next few years. Everything from, with our, I'll say with the device you mean like with the device manufacturers to the digital identity providers to the biometrics. I think everything's going to hopefully start to merge a little bit more, and we're going to get some really cool, innovative features that enable a lot of use cases, and then ups our trust, right? And really understanding really understanding and identity proofing and verifying people, and maybe even not, non-human identities as well too. So really exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's really exciting stuff. And when I think about areas like that, if the technology is there and it's affordable and it's proven, companies could start using that right away. Yeah. I think there's sometimes these things feel like, oh, they're so far away. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, it's ubiquitous. MFA is a perfect example.
Right.
I was looking back in an old slide deck. It was like a 10 or 12-year-old slide deck. And it was something I had put together for a client. And it said, next down the road, you need to implement MFA.
Yeah.
And it's like, you would never make that recommendation out.
Right.
Like, if a client didn't have MFA, it's like,
you're like,
like, run for the exits.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, it's been great having you on. This has been a fantastic discussion, and really appreciate you taking the time. It would be wrong of me not to do our traditional end on a lighter note.
Sure.
And so I came up with a question for you, and here it goes. So you're from Cincinnati, and I thought of a couple of things that popped to my mind about Cincinnati, and I want you to tell me if they should symbolize Cincinnati or if it should be something else.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is WKRP, the old TV show.
Absolutely. I think that is quintessential Cincinnati, and people all over the country and even across the world, and they're like, what was that show? What? And they're like, so yeah, it definitely is a representation of Cincinnati. Yeah,
I really liked that show growing up. Okay, the next one is Great American Ballpark.
So I am a Reds fan. I like the Reds. I think the ballpark is a great place to go. It is right in the city on the water, so I think it's good. The Reds have been, I wouldn't say the ballpark, but probably the Reds, right? I mean, they were one of the first baseball teams in America. We still have a great opening day parade. Every year it's like the city shuts down, everybody takes off work. So, the ballpark and the Reds, I think are definitely representative of Cincinnati.
So the last one I have, I think it might surprise you that I even know this one as a Cincinnati thing, which is spaghetti with chili over the top of it.
Yeah. Skyline Chili. It's like Cincinnati Chili. There's a couple of different franchises, and you're either a Skyline person or a Gold Star person, and they fight about it. But I've been in Cincinnati for a while now. I never got on that trend.
Okay.
So, but when people think of Cincinnati, they think of Cincinnati Chili. So sure, why not? We'll take it.
I've done a few times with the chili at home, and I just don't understand why people like it so much. So
yeah, you could get it shipped to your house now, or so all over the country.
I won't be doing that. But so Deneen, is there any other Cincinnati hallmarks that you would throw into that list?
So I definitely think. I definitely think it's Oktoberfest. So I don't know that people know this, but Cincinnati is, a lot of German ancestry and a lot of architecture and things like that. We even have a part of the city called Over the Rhine, right? So reminiscent of the old country. But Oktoberfest, we have a Oktoberfest festival every year in Cincinnati, and it is the second largest Oktoberfest in the world versus Munich. So if you ever have a chance to look up Oktoberfest Cincinnati and be in the city, you'll have a great time. It's really fun.
I'm sold.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. It was great meeting you, Deneen, and doing this show. Our podcast can be found on YouTube at idacpodcast.tv. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Twitter. We're on Mastodon. I think if you're a regular listener to the show, you know all those links and how to find us. It'll all be in the show notes. And look forward to talking to you all in the next one. For now, this is Identity at the Center podcast in Cincinnati. Bye, everyone.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.